Let's talk about the Kesha Dr. Luke controversy. In fact, we got a lot of requests to talk about this. We would have talked about it regardless, but I love seeing that our viewers are just as invested as we are. So we do know that Kesha had alleged that Dr. Luke, her producer, had raped her when she was 18, drugged and raped her, and that she endured his abuse for years after until finally she could not take it anymore, and she pursued having their contract nullified. So we know that she went to court and the judge ruled in Dr. Luke's favor. Now, Dr. Luke and his camp this entire time have denied the allegations, right? So after the ruling, we saw Kesha coming out of the courthouse. She was sobbing. People were holding up Free Kesha signs. Free Kesha trended all over social media. A number of celebrities, musicians, industry insiders, like music industry insiders, have rallied around Kesha, not Dr. Luke. So we know that and I think this one is the most telling because Kelly Clarkson has worked with Dr. Luke. She first shared a tweet from the band Best Coast calling the ruling bullshit, then wrote, trying to not say anything since I can't say anything nice about a person, so this is me not talking about Dr. Luke. And she had worked, Kelly Clarkson had worked with Dr. Luke. And then also we had a number of tweets from Lady Gaga, support from Lorde, Taylor Swift donating $250,000 to help Kesha financially during this time, and then also Demi Lovato. The list goes on and on and on. What did you guys think when you first saw the trend of Free Kesha and seeing those photos of her coming out of the courtroom sobbing?
Record labels exploiting artists is like the Catholic Church molesting children, okay? Everyone knows it's happening. There's a history of abuse there at all points. And I'm talking about like the ruling basically where Kesha is now forced to work with Sony even though she's in a compromised position. And you just can't go against the might of God, basically. Like, you can't go against the Catholic Church because they're too powerful, and you can't go up against record labels. And now Kesha is being put in an incredibly compromised position where she's forced to work with this label. And there are so many instances in the past where record labels have had these disputes and continue to work with these artists, and their record label sales have plummeted because of it. And there are very specific ones where, like Johnny Cash versus Columbia Records, for example, where he wanted to make a political album where he, talked more about like Native American tribes and gave it more of a political message, where Columbia Records essentially said, we don't want you to do this album. And Johnny Cash was forced to promote it on his own against Columbia Records, where Columbia Records literally called up radio stations and said, don't put this album out. We don't want you to push this out. Because it's more of like a, we have all the power, you have nothing, know your place kind of situation. And it's really scary for Kesha, because I wonder what's going to happen in the future. Like, there's no way if she puts out, how is she going to continue to work with Sony Records after all this stuff has happened?
Right. And before you chime in, I just want to clarify, because I did not say, and you alluded to the fact that the reason is she yes, has to work with Sony. She does not. Sony says you do not have to work with Dr. Luke per se, but of course, Mark Garagos, her attorney, made it very clear in so many words, I don't have the transcript in front of me, but said, listen, Dr. Luke is the golden child of Sony, right? He is the hit maker of Sony. Yeah. So by her not working with Dr. Luke and Sony having the back of Dr. Luke, they feel that she's in a compromised position working with Sony, one, because they haven't had her back, right?
Yeah.
Two, because they're going to promote him over her. And now she feels like that there's some sort of beef where she's not going to get the radio play and the support that she would with a label that is behind her. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, that's pretty much what I was going to touch on, is that Sony has pretty much every reason to bury Kesha as an artist. This looks really bad for them.
Yeah.
This looks, and I hate that we're focusing on it looks bad for Sony, it looks bad for Dr. Luke, because the allegations are incredibly serious. But I think it's important that people remember that the ruling that came out was about the contract. It had nothing to do with whether or not the judge, finds that Dr. Luke was, did sexually assault Kesha. Unfortunately, that's not what the ruling was.
Right.
The ruling was about contracts. And so is it better to be fair or is it better to be just? In this case, the judge decided that it was better to be just. And that's just kind of how the cards fell. And it sucks. And I don't think there's any way to win here, but I really wish that Sony would take a step back and see the humanity in this case, because the whole thing is very cold, because it's all about contracts. But we're dealing with someone who is a victim of sexual assault, who isn't
Allegedly, though. You also need to mention that.
allegedly, but that's why women don't come forward, because people are saying, like, that's why women don't come forward, because you have to deal with this shit. And then Dr. Luke's camp is saying that she's doing this to tarnish his brand, to extort him for money. Are you fucking kidding me? Why the fuck would she do this? Her passion is music. She's not even being allowed to make music for the past 2 years. Her brand is forever ruined, and she's doing that to extort money like a sociopath. This whole thing is ridiculous, but I hate that the trial became so, that the court proceedings became so cold, because there is humanity here. I'm sure that Dr. Luke feels terrible, Kesha feels very terrible, and Sony doesn't seem like they give a shit. That's why I hate it.
That's how it is every time. Is at the record label level, it's all about money. Okay, like you need to realize this. I think everyone, and I'm not saying it's right, but like,
but there needs to be humanity involved too. I've seen a number of different business transactions as of recent with huge conglomerate companies where they do lead with empathy and they do lead with vulnerability. And if somebody were to say, listen, this contract isn't working out for me, and of course this is an anomaly, oftentimes more than not, they're going to think money and, oh, this contract's ironclad and we're going to take you to the bank. But there are people out there, and I wish that Sony could be one of those people where they look at it and they go, you're not happy, you're not going to be motivated, you're not happy, you're not going to be motivated, this isn't a win-win situation, let's cut our losses. Why can't more people have that philosophy when they go into business?
Because if Kesha leaves Sony,
it doesn't help the bottom dollar. It doesn't.
But obviously, I'm sure that there are thousands of lawyers and accountants crunching numbers inside of Sony, thinking if Kesha goes somewhere else and releases a couple hits in another record label, we're already in the music industry, they're already in a compromised position. They've already obviously looked at the backlash that might arise from this situation and probably realized, like, no, it's better to keep Kesha under our label and keep pushing her back as much as possible underneath our label. Because if she goes elsewhere and she produces some hits, Sony is eventually going to lose the money.
I get it. It's fucked up, and I think it has more to do with ego, because I think it's pretty obvious that Kesha and Sony, it's already, the damage has already been done, right? There's already people that are boycotting Sony. There's all these different, I'm not even talking about the people that have worked with Dr. Luke, but more so music industry insiders that know about Dr. Luke, but then at the same time, nobody's actually calling a spade a spade. And that's what you're alluding to, right? Like this fact, this rape culture that permeates, and I know that we're gonna get people in the comment section saying, oh, you guys aren't being neutral. Newsflash, we're not a news show, we're a talk show. So we're allowed to inject our opinion. And in this case, you mentioned, what does Kesha have to gain? Let's look at statistically that the vast majority, 9 times out of 10, victims of rape, sexual assault, sexual abuse, they're not lying. The ones that do come forward is a small, like minuscule percent that come forward and lie, and we know about it. That's a small percent. Now, the people that don't come forward, again, they don't come forward because people are going to wave their finger at them and blame them and say that they should be ashamed, or they asked for it, or they don't want to talk about it because they don't want to bring attention to themselves. So that's why it took Kesha how many years to finally come forward. That's why it takes a number of sexual assault, rape, abuse victims forever, if not ever, to come forward. And I think it's great that people are. I'm so happy to see these celebrities speaking out for Kesha, because it's not just Kesha. It does resemble and represent a number of other countless cases out there. And you just have to use your common sense. What would Kesha gain, and why are so many people rallying behind her and around her and not Dr. Luke? That speaks volumes.
Now, I'm not saying that Kesha came out and is definitely doing this for any sort of financial gain, but I think we should also mention that there is, like you said, Dr. Luke's camp has come out and said that Kesha has been trying to extort them for a while now, not publicly, like privately trying to extort Dr. Luke into possibly putting themselves in a better position within Sony.
Where's the proof? That's what a defense team does. You saw that.
I know. I'm just saying, but like that's their perspective, and you raise a pretty good question of like what would Kesha gain, and that's one of the things. And that is something that we should probably mention still. That like if Dr. Luke is completely innocent of that because there haven't been any other people. And I'm not saying that Dr. Luke is innocent or not innocent. We don't know. But if he is innocent,
we're never going to know, unfortunately, because
Kesha didn't go.
She doesn't have any evidence because she didn't go to a hospital and immediately report him. Newsflash: a lot of victims don't do that because of the shame,
especially
and the guilt,
because she was
and
an
for a variety of
18-year-old,
reasons.
bright-eyed, starry-eyed girl that came on a record label and her entire life was about to change.
He's a very powerful man.
And he's a very powerful man. I completely understand that dynamic. And I can't say this without, victim blaming it all. So I'm just not going to mention anything further.
Yeah. You're trying to stay neutral. And I appreciate that. I can't stay neutral in this case because we both have done our own independent research, and it doesn't lend to Dr. Luke. It lends to the support, lends to Kesha, and my heart breaks for her. Did you want to add anything?
Yeah, just really quick. I have a feeling people are going to be talking about this as well. So Taylor Swift's camp came out and said that she donated $250,000 to Kesha because during this time she obviously has not been making new music, and she has said that Dr. Luke has withheld her royalties. And so for her to continue with all the legal fees, Taylor Swift donated $250,000. So Demi Lovato was kind of tweeting last night saying that, instead of, let me read, make sure I don't misquote my girl Demi. So Demi Lovato was on Twitter, and she was saying, really active on this Free Kesha hashtag, and she also has been really outspoken about sexual assault.
Yep.
So this is something very close to her heart, and she says, frustrating to see women come forward with their past only be shut down, not believed and disrespected for their bravery in taking action. And then she says a bunch of tweets to a similar extent. She says, women empowerment is speaking up for other women even when it's something uncomfortable to speak up about. And then she says women empowerment is leading other women to make actual changes in our society. And then she said also,
where's the Taylor Swift disc?
I'm also ready for self-proclaimed feminists to start speaking out or taking action for women's rights. So people get a hold of that, and then Tumblr and Instagram were going crazy, saying that Demi's throwing shade at Taylor because this was after the press release came out. And so someone posted a picture and said, Demi's making this about herself instead of the issue. What Taylor did was great. And Demi's trying to create a rivalry. Demi responds to this random fan's Instagram comment saying, how the f*** am I making this about myself? At least I'm talking about it. Not everyone has $250,000 to just give to people. Would love to, but I didn't grow up with money, and I haven't made as much as her. At least I speak up about shit that's uncomfortable to talk about rather than trying to be politically correct 24/7. She continues, there's no rivalry. I just give more f***s than other people and would rather start a dialogue, and this is in all caps, about women coming forward about being raped than throw money at one person. I didn't shade Taylor. If you take it that way, then fine. I'm just tired of seeing women use women empowerment and feminism to further brands without actually being the ones that have the uncomfortable conversations. I get shade and I don't give a fuck because someone has to be the one to take it. At least I'm getting my hands dirty.
Wow. Yes, girl. Okay, we're going to end it on that note. Oh, wow. There is a lot to talk about here. You guys, please share all of your thoughts in the comment section below about the Kesha controversy. Yes.
Let's talk about it. I want to talk about it.
There's so many layers here, and we want to hear everything that you guys have to say, and we'll see you guys next time on Pop Trigger.